in your book, you quote George Bernard Shaw. And say, you haven't overcome the fear of death until you delight in your own life, believing it to be carrying out the universal purpose.
That is my favorite quote of all quotes of all time.
So to start with a simple question, what is the universal purpose?
Well, he defines it pretty well. Won't you read that again?
Yep. You haven't overcome the fear of death until you delight in your own life.
Until you delight in your own life, believing it to be a part of carrying out the universal purpose. And the universal purpose is loving one another, is understanding that we are all, my bumper sticker reads, just another version of you. That's why the documentary they did on my life that's the title off my bumper sticker, because we are versions of one another. And, I think understanding that, truly understanding that, it ends racism.
Absolutely. Yep.
I'll take that.
Thinking of that, that universal purpose and delight in your own life, I read that you experience joy in waking each day, thinking of the coffee you're going to have, and this is what Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi had once identified as a key to successful and creative life. Tell us a little bit more.
I was thinking about that. I loved your talk, by the way, and thank you for that. But as you were talking, I was thinking about something I wish to convey, and that would be, I don't wake up to be an old man. I wake up for all kinds of reasons. I wake up to have coffee. I love the taste of coffee in the morning, as you just mentioned. When my kids are around, I can't wait to see their faces. My wife sleeps a bit later than I do, so, and I wake up to go to work. One Day at a Time is on the air, it's doing well. I want to tell you about another show that's taking me something like 35 years to do. Will interest this crowd and this conversation a good deal. I wanted to do a show 35 or so years ago about aging and about the elderly and so forth, everybody over 55 or 60. And the only way I thought I could get it done at the time, or I was led to believe I could get it done, was animation. So I did. I still have. I could have. Oh, we could have run it this morning. A 6-minute film. My title was "Till the Fat Lady Sings," and Kirk Douglas was in it. His voice. He was a little character in a wheelchair who only had one thing to say, and anytime that little wheelchair and he was seen, he said, "Never have a stroke." That came off of his just having had a stroke, that first stroke. Anne Bancroft, her voice was, anyway, I loved it. Couldn't sell it. 7 years ago, I tried it again, not animated, but a live show. And this title is, ask me the title.
What's the title?
Guess who died? But guess who died? 2 weeks ago, NBC said, let's do it. So, just 2 weeks ago. Hired a director, casting director, we're just getting started. And it will be a retirement village where people are still running around in golf carts visiting each other, where there is plenty of stuff going on. And anybody in America could be on the phone with an uncle or an aunt. That part of it I just get the biggest kick out of. When I wrote this particular script, this will give you a firm idea how old it is, Charlie Sheen was in all that trouble Charlie Sheen was in, and I thought, oh my God, if this was on the air now, he'd have an uncle that he was calling for some advice, right off the headlines. So I couldn't be more excited about Guess Who Died.
That's fantastic. Well, we're all looking forward to it. We want to know.
Yes, I'm looking for a 75, 76-year-old Jew.
Oh, well, we got a volunteer already.
Yes.
Yeah, there may be a few around. It's interesting. You always surprise me, and that's another thing that Csikszentmihalyi associated with creativity was one of his recommendations was to surprise someone every day and to surprise yourself every day. And I just wonder, it struck me reading some of your own autobiographical material that was true for you. And I wonder you could tell us what surprised you today and what else are you going to do? You've already surprised us at least once. But.
Well, it's surprise. I think it's great to think about surprises. I'm not saying that I have all. I'll think about it more now that we've had this conversation. But here's a surprise that I think of often. The fact of this moment is, I just did this. It took me every split second of my life. 95 years, some months, some weeks, some days, some minutes, hours, to do this. And I just did it again, and I'm going to do it again. It took me the rest of my life to do that. So I think about, and it took every split second of your lives to get to see me do this. You can't contradict that. It's, one of those statements we don't think enough about. That's 1,000%. I mean, it's altogether true. Isn't it amazing that all of you are here? By the way, the reason you got up this morning was because I got up. The reason I got up this morning is because each of you got up this morning and we were going to be here at this moment. So living in the, I often think of two little words that we don't honor enough, over and next. Something's over, it's over. We're always on to next. And if there was a hammock in the middle, that would be what we call, the best definition I would have for the expression living in the moment. And, it cost us all a little bit more of our lives to get to this split second.
But well worth it. And
worth it, yes.
And there's so many great examples. Your book, I get to experience this. I think it really exemplifies that ideal of being in the present, living for and enjoying what is, loving what is.
Loving what is.
It's really an amazing thing. But I have some questions that come from, I'm a neuropsychologist,
Yes.
And I read also that in your book, your family legend includes that your mother dropped you on your head in the sink when you were 3 months old. And I want to know how you think that influenced your brain development.
She dropped me. This, by the way, is a story that, one of those family stories that everybody laughed at every few years or whenever the hell the story was told. But my mother loved telling it. Everybody always laughed. And I always asked the same questions. I was a couple of months old. She was washing me in the sink, in the kitchen sink. And she dropped me. And she ran for help. And as often as and over the years, maybe the first 20 years, it was a laugh. Then I started to think about it at age 30 or something. And I would ask her often, Mom, you dropped me in the sink and you ran for help? She said, yes, so I wasn't going to leave you there. Why didn't you pick me up? I ran for help. I could never. I called her, the head of the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences was a good friend many years ago. And he called me on a Sunday and said, we met all day yesterday. the board and decided we were going to start a Hall of Fame. Norman, I just have to tell you, these are the inductees of the first Hall of Fame of the Academy. David Sarnoff, who invented NBC, William Paley, who did CBS, Edward R. Murrow, the greatest of the foreign correspondents, Patty Chayefsky, I think the best writer that ever came out of television, Lucille Ball, Milton Berle, and you, me. I called my mother in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Mom, listen to this. They're starting a Hall of Fame. I just got the call. These are the inductees, and I rattled them up, and me. She says, listen, if that's what they want to do, who am I to say?
And I can't let it go while we're on the topic of good mothering. And there's a message out there for all the mothers, but can you tell us about the letters that you wrote when you were flying missions? Their son is off flying 52 missions over war-torn Europe during World War II, sends beautiful love letters, you describe them as, to your mother, sharing your experience.
When I came back, she said, she showed me these letters. And I couldn't get over it. I looked at several of them, and they were love letters. I couldn't believe how loving they were. And I don't feel that way about her because we were not close. She never told me she cared about me except when other people around, then she couldn't stop. But I don't remember ever hearing an I love you alone, just all together alone, just us. Anyway, but she gave me that laugh. that story, and I'm forever, I adore her for it. What was I starting to say?
Yeah, with those, what did she do with those love letters?
Oh, I don't know, several years later, I was visiting her again in Bridgeport. I said, Mom, I'd love to have those letters. She said, I showed them to you, sweetheart. Anyway, she had destroyed them. She had thrown them away. And
unbelievable. And to be maybe a little bit more serious, you know, some of those kinds of, I don't know if you call them adversity or formative moments, you know, your dad also, you described as a rascal in a kind way. But you describe a moment that you said you realized something about the foolishness of the human condition.
My father
spurred you on.
My father was flying to Oklahoma when I was 9 years old. My mother was saying, Herman, I don't like those men. She didn't want him to work with these men, whoever the hell they were. And he flew to Oklahoma, and he was going to bring, that may be the fascination with the hat, he was going to bring me back a 10-gallon hat from Oklahoma. Well, when I was 9 years old, if a plane came along, you know, in the sky, very rarely, we kids were running down the street yelling, Lindy, Lindy, Lindy. It had only been 8 or 9 years since Lindbergh flew. And my father was going to Oklahoma, so that's a big deal. He was arrested when he got off the plane coming home. What he had been trying to do was sell, or what he was about to do was sell some fake bonds. And he served 3 years in prison. 2 days after, or a day after my dad was arrested, there were 3 or 4 editions of the Boston Globe. Where are you going, sir? What have I said to offend you? Stop that man! So there were newspapers lying around with a headline, and the hat was over his face, and he was manacled to a detective coming down the steps of the courthouse. And my mother was selling the furniture because she was ashamed. Maybe we couldn't afford to stay there, I don't know, but she was selling the furniture. There was a crowd of people I didn't know. And there was one guy about to buy my father's red leather chair. My father's red leather chair was holy ground to me, because we used to listen to the fights together, Madison Square Garden, 9 or 10 o'clock on Friday nights. always. He used to come home and listen to the Lone Ranger in that chair. It was so. This guy is buying that chair, and he sees me standing there. Clenched in my fist is a roll of paper of Norman Lear, that my mother was going to sew into clothes I was going to take to camp. I had never been to camp. I was going to camp, and I, of course, didn't get to go. But I'm standing there in that condition. He's buying the red leather chair, puts his hand on my shoulder, and says, "Norm, you're the man of the house now." And somehow, as young as I was, I understood what a clown, what a fool. And that I later called the foolishness of the human condition. From that moment on, I understood there wasn't a moment as tragic as any one could be, any one moment, that didn't have some humor in it, because of what I call the foolishness. It starts with the amount of holes in our body.
Well,
That's funny. You're telling me I'm out of here.
No.